Hey everyone, this is Dane Reichenbach here, coming back to you with no voice after the finals and world finals of Dragon Ball Super's 2023 season here. Uh, this is just going to be the quick deck profile here. I got top 16 with Android 21. I'm going to go over it all. We'll quick cover some matchups and we'll wrap it up with the shout out. Easy peasy, get you out of here, give you back your. It's Tuesday for me. I don't know when you guys are going to see this. So, first things first, Android 21. At this point, if you're playing in this format, you do know what this leader does. But, can't use extra cards, pick up a life, draw a card, get back an energy. Great. And then being able to use your opponent's cards as energy. Can't play cards with skills, which I have a funny story on. I can tell in my stream at some point. And then once per turn, you can draw a card, restand up to 3 of your opponent's cards, ignoring barrier, to be able to get that energy back. So, excellent leader. Not my favorite. The reason I chose it, honestly, is probably because I just think it's the best blue deck. I don't necessarily intend to keep playing it. It's not my favorite deck in the world to play. I think, some of the things it does are a little bit unfair. But occasionally it can be really fun to do, like, the fun sequencing of, like, figuring out what's perfect to restand, what's not. And then otherwise it just falls into my play style of, I don't want to attack you. Sorry, I don't want us to play the game together. But anyhow, she's there. Excellent leader. Just great. Seeker Rare is kind of obvious. Android 21, Transcendental Predator. Huge board wipe. Just going to take care of everything that you need. I mean, regen, so it's broken in time. It's a huge 40k dual attack for some reason, I mean, just an insane card. For Ceaseless Despair, just a 0-10k, and then an occasional endgame boss monster, being able to get stuff ignoring barrier. Everyone's kind of playing Cunnings on you at some point, so, like, realistically, when you play her, you're either winning that turn, or, like, you're playing her with the intention of, like, forcing cards, and then, getting 1, maybe 2 energy back at that point. But for the most part, you're just trying to use the 0-10k effect most of the time. For some check lands, we've got 4 full power counter and 3 measureless strength. Full power counter is also a negate. I did not resolve it as a negate even once, or as a counter attack even once this weekend. I charged it every single time. There was one moment where I thought I was going to, and I didn't. I even played it offensively once, but not. Never used it as a counter attack. So, then we have measureless strength. It's got an arrival effect, so it's an emergency button. It's got a discard effect to boost consistency, so you can find your super combos and stuff. And then it's, of course, also a check land. So, very great little package. I love these numbers here. If anything, I would consider, like, putting a full power counter to the side for matchups where you actually need that. But having the blue-green, you do usually need about 2 blues or 2 greens in any given game to be able to make your deck function in entirety. And then the one of Bad Omen, the last blue-green card for that. It's Burn. That's pretty good. That's kind of all I got to say about it. We're playing 3 total Audacity, draw 2. She can be a bit of a detriment. You only usually do her at the beginning of the game when, if they Koitsukai, you can defend yourself without defending friends. And then at the end of the game, you kind of can't play her unless you're going for game that turn, because she starts to become a detriment. At least in the early game, if you play her and they Koitsukai, they're not really getting max value out of their Koitsukai because they probably don't have a full board established at this point anyway. But by the end of the game, if they have 5 energy, they still have 4 more plays they're probably going to make. That's where it's going to be tricky, right? But if you just do it, like, and you're passing to their turn 3, if they Koitsukai for 1 of their 3 energy, you're probably in a good spot. In the main, just 1 Wavering Will. Only mainboarding the 1. There are 2 more on the side, but really it's just really good against blue and the Gohan mirror. I did use it against... I either used it against U6 or I intended to use it against... Oh, no, I definitely used it against U6. It's a 4-drop. You can prevent, like, the Goku from restanding, right? So you go, like, 3 and then the Goku, and then their leader can't really tap it to get the value. Excellent play, but just a pretty good card, draws a card. A lot of times it was just like my crit body that I first started swinging into U7 with. For Android 17, my favorite anecdote of the whole weekend was just constantly thinking and talking about how if this card had just been like a Whis or a Krillin from U7 instead of Android 17, the game would look entirely different. like just not searchable with 21. Gamma would probably be unbanned. The card is super, super strong. It's not broken. There's a lot of answers to it, right? And people are obviously playing Koitsukai, but it is a kind of a mid-game stop, or at least it reduces their kill power, because then they're going to give you 2 or 3 cards to keep swinging. 4-pan. She's additional energy, and she cycles. Also an excellent turn 1 play. Just, I think we all know she's super strong. That's really all there is to it. 3 speedy substitution. I was at 4. I reduced it down to 3 just based off the fact that she was always like the first card coming out of my side. She's mostly just there as like, if your leader doesn't find your secret rare at any point in your first 2 or 3 turns, you want to be playing her kind of in that middle and late game to make sure that you have this. Likewise, I do play some big boss monster androids that she finds as well. The most important 1-drop in the game, Shupilaf Mai. This card is ridiculous. It doesn't solo win Universe 7 matchup, but it sure feels like it does sometimes. Ripping keywords off is ridiculous because you get barrier. You can rip barrier indestructible and then bottom deck stuff with Boo or your Gohan or Android 718. You can always just rip things like Servant to prevent extra draws. You can just bottom deck combo power on their board, and then it's still just a 5k and it drew. Like it's so crazy. Some quick little boss monsters. I played a 1/1 Tide and Perfect Force Cell in the main. Honestly, they win the game in entirely different ways. So a lot of people think the Tide is just this big win button, but truth be told, Tide only wins the game when both players are kind of like already kind of low and out of stuff to do, and you have a board established. That's kind of the big thing, right? Removal in this game is so easy that a lot of times, like by the moment you're at 7, it's not like you have additional cards to be like swinging with. You would go like swing Tide. Chances are they might even already have an answer to something, right? If they're playing Z extras or if they're playing a Unison that has a defensive capability, Tide might not even necessarily go through. And then suddenly you're just like, okay, well, my 1 leader draw, maybe a Unison draw, and like no attacks off, right? Doesn't actually win the game most of the time. Cell is extremely useful. Same energy costs. Now that like Cold Bloodlust is kind of out of the format, we're really just worried about exactly Frost Deadly Poison and occasionally Death Blaster, but like really not Death Blaster. It's very difficult to set up in the current set of yellow decks. But just rip them all the way down to 3. You don't have to get rid of anything because you can be at like 9 cards in hand and then go Perfect Force. They go down to 3 and then pass there, and then all of a sudden now they're in a worse spot, right? Against things like U7 or the like, that, you know, you turn your card sideways finally for a turn and they start picking up their life like, oh my gosh, thank you for putting me from 6 to 3. I needed these 3 cards. And then you make them lose them all. Kind of his purpose there. So, could be in the side, but I preferred to main it just in case top 16 came up and I needed it for that. So, that's really all it was. 2 Android 18, Let the Battle Begin. We'll talk about the Unisons later, but just a counterplay for 4 or less, really good against, you know, some red decks, and then especially into Universe 7. You need to make sure that you have her for the Vegeta, the Majin Vegeta, and Goku 4-drop. 1 of Oob in the main, just a board clear, usually kind of intended for red. But honestly, just a big finisher in just about every deck, right? If anybody doesn't respect Oob, it's just like, okay, cool, I'll pay 2, make you probably lose a card, or just win the game with the double strike outright. 1 Gohan rare. I actually intended for it to be 2. My deck list had 2, and then I got a warning in Top Cut because my list was wrong all day. Whoops. But yeah, so I was just down a Gohan. That's okay. I probably would have wanted it for red decks, but I dodged those literally all day. So, great work there. We got 3 Android 8 and the 1 Zeno Super Combo Split. Searchable Super Combo. I don't think it's right to play either of the blue-greens, right? You don't necessarily need the hand control. You need to see more cards rather than hitting their hand, especially when you plan to be playing bombs a lot of the time anyway. You know, and then of course Zeno is basically your emergency button. If your opponent's playing any anti-D-Magic cards or they tap you out as yellow, Zeno goes, I'd like to not be tapped out, please. Likewise, it also fixes your energy when you ramp in this deck. You know, if you hit your secret rare and you don't have time to play a speedy sub, if you had to charge like an Android 17 kind of early on and you needed to grab it back, Zeno can do that. For my unisons, I have 1 Boo, 1 hit. Boo is limited to 1 for a reason. Card is super strong. Honestly, it's worse than it's really ever been. There are a lot of decks that there's like a couple decks in the format that it does just like auto win against, you think kind of like Meki and Jiren. But everybody else just kind of like removes it for the most part, you know what I mean? It's just immediately gone, which is totally fine, right? If you spend 4 and they spend their whole turn removing it and you got to draw a card, did 20k double, it's like a fine trade. But it's still something that like you'd prefer to have it stick around for a while. Hit is just the sooner one, right? And again, it's good into a lot of different matchups. Not so good into green because of the unison removal they have, but realistically, that -1 wins mirror matches. It wins matches into things like Meki, right? If they already used their ultimate effect and they didn't Z Awaken yet, you can flip them back down. It's good against like future Gohan, right, to prevent some stuff like that. I don't know. There's a couple different options that it's just like, wow, that effect is really good to just flip your opponent down. And if you can protect it for a turn, it's great, especially if you're on the play, right? If you're going first, you just get to play this like on turn 3, draw a card, awaken, and then pass with 1 or 2 up still. Very easy to protect at that point. For extra cards, I have a couple 1-ofs. I have a 1-of UI. Just a big number. Occasionally you get to push it or use it defensively. Excellent, honestly, as a 1-of. Totally fine in this deck. You're going to probably draw in most of your deck every game. The 1-of Absolute Release Ball. It did actually come up a couple times this weekend that I was able to use it to prevent either the play of like something like a Shu My Pilaf to prevent like rip of a double strike. Or I was able to use it once on Legends Michael Carrick in our top 16 match to prevent him from ramping. Just a couple different various answers that it's got, and so you can keep stuff out of their board and get energy back near the end of the game if you are desperately tapped out. 2 Senzu Bean, all you kind of need right now, right? Red is popular, but it is not like the single most popular thing in the world. Once it gets more popular, you will go back to 3 in the main or 4. But for now, 2 is just fine, and I kind of dodged red all day. And then the last card, of course, 4 Dimension Magic. Ridiculous card. Definitely the reason blue is designed how it is of paying all of its energy for everything is because of those last 2 extra cards. Moving on into my sideboard. Whoop. I guess let's do the Z deck first, rather. We've got 2 Android 21 in the Name of Peace. Your basic ramp piece, it's going to make sure that you get there. A lot of the times you play this, like, in theory you can only play 1, but really you want to play the second one. Sometimes it's best to ramp an additional time for cheaper, but a lot of the times it's that, like, you can give them a pan, tap their, like, 1 cantrip that's still out, plus the pan, get this, and this produces a blue energy for you, right? Because your leader can use your Z battles to do pay stuff, it just makes an extra body, and it just forces them to get rid of it. In some matchups, if you're going like the really grindy route, it's a 5k crit with a super combo or a ceaseless. Not a 5. Well, I mean 15k, but you know what I mean. We've got 2 Android 21 in the Name of Hunger, right? Yeah, in the Name of Hunger. This is your ramp card. Costs 2, gets Z energy, gets the Z stack. Just an excellent card. It's a removal. It immediately removes the secret rare because you can go, all right, I'll attempt to Z stack it, and then I'll bottom deck it, and it's just gone immediately if you're ever playing the mirror match. Cell, this is your board wipe, typically for red, sometimes for yellow, and it's just really good that it's to have basically give yourself access to a critical body at all times. If you're ever in a position where like you're trying to starve your opponent, just having that ready to go is excellent. 1 of Zamasu. So you're primarily using it just to Z-stack Indestructible, right? Because you want to give Indestructible to your In the Name of Hunger. If you're playing into certain matchups, especially green, that's kind of the big one. But there was actually one moment this weekend that I played it hardcast for 3 just because I needed the 1 blocker. I was like, I want a blocker for 1 turn. And then it got removed. But that's okay. That's the way Indestructible works. Sometimes it's broken, sometimes it's not. And then the 1Z extra. I played a blue-black Kamehameha Mighty Blast. I could have played the green one, but the blue is just a little more secure. Likewise, it gives you access to the big 3 effect instead of just the 2. I did use its removal effect a couple times, the 10k. So it came up, but the difference of being a 2 to a 3 never really did. I really like just having a Z extra in just about every deck because it's just an extra. If it's something to do, it's something to do. In the sideboard, I played 2 Wavering Wills, almost entirely for Gohan, literally just pulling it in, make sure that their 8-drop can't swing when they do it. I did it to Klinger this weekend, and I did it to one other. It's very, very useful, super important. An additional Sensu Bean for red, specifically more so for Jiren. You don't necessarily need it against Gohanks. There are other things you need to prioritize, but for sure you need it for the 15Ks. If you were to play against something like Ape Coup as well, for some reason, that would be kind of stuff that you would put it in for. I occasionally I thought about pulling it in for Universe 7 in case they were on a Victory Strike build, but it never came up. What should have been the 3rd Gohan is actually only my 2nd Gohan, so it would have come in against Jiren, Red Gohan. Occasionally comes in against U7 because you just want to be prepared in case they're on like Majin Vegeta builds. If they're playing that Vegeta dual attacker, if they're playing the Secret Rare, you want to be able to get rid of it. Same with the 6-drop as well, right? Making sure that you have an answer to it, even if they counter. One additional Oob for red, and then the U7 matchup because they're always going to have Z energy. For red, you just want it for the extra removal and then endgame pressure for cheap. An additional Total Audacity. This was probably my worst sideboard card of the weekend, at least in theory, right? There were other cards that didn't necessarily come in because I didn't need them, but specifically, she's kind of there to be the additional draw power if you're playing against green. But it does kind of counteract my statement earlier about how the fact that if your opponent Koitsukais, you're just in a worse spot off, and I don't want to be in a bad position like that. 2 Deborah, respect for Gohan, just need to resolve 1 usually, and you'll be totally fine. Tapion, respect for Gogeta, which I did actually play against in the feature match, which you guys will probably see at some point. I lost that one, unfortunately, but that's just the way it goes. 1 Tragedy Overground. Yes, I was hard casting it for 9. Card's pretty good. Card is pretty good. Against Universe 7, it basically means they can't play anything at all, right? Like, none of their cards except for Cooler and their cantrips work. And then against things like Red Cooler Mill, you can slam it, and then they won't be able to arrive anything except for Boo Hercule or use the rush attacks to start milling you. Everything else won't really be effective, and you can just start pushing them. I played 2 Koitsukai, again for Cooler Mill. Occasionally came in for other stuff, but like it's primarily for Cooler Mill. 1 Android 16 Limiter Disengaged. This is a respect card for yellow with lots of unisons. Specifically, right, if the Universe 7 player was playing like 2 Trunks in the main and then they like sided into Gohans or something. That's bad for me if they're playing Gohan. Wanted to make sure I had Android 16s. And then also for green, I did always pull it in for the Gohan matchups because I wanted to be prepared that if they slammed Golden Frieza after I did an Android 17, I could go, okay, Arrival, rip off the triple strike. And then if they dumped, they lose. If they didn't, then it's like, okay, well, at least I'm not dealing with the pressure. 1 Jiren, just Android 17 turning the tide. Got to make sure you have it. We actually didn't see lists in top 16, so it wasn't as relevant. In theory, you could have sided it out, but you do always want to be generally on the safer side of things. And then the one of Vegito Z-Deck card, I actually just use it to replace Zamasu in the red matchups. You just kind of like pull it in and go, yeah, the barrier is more important to Z-Stack. Likewise, you can also use it just as a big body, right? If you're ever playing against Cooler or something, or you're playing against U7 and you need it to be like a sticky little guy, he just like rips a card and removes a card every turn. So really solid stuff. I was super happy with the side deck overall, probably besides the Total Audacity. The Limiter Disengage I made as a last minute change, but I think it was the right call. I just didn't happen to play against the Unison versions of those decks. So other than that, this set of cards, beautiful. On to some quick matchup stuff. So I'll just want to go over the actual games. So in round 1, I had a bye from my regional performances this year. For those unaware, I actually topped all 9 of the regionals that I played in, so that was really good. And to finish it out strong this year with 10 for 10, I'm so ridiculously proud of how I've done this year. A lot of improvement. Round 2 was my first U7 matchup. Played 2 Shupiel off my, and that was kind of the end of it. I played round 3, was Rainbow Vegito. He probably should have won. But I got a little lucky in that he whiffed on like a pay 2, so he couldn't get a triple strike off in a spot where I wouldn't have had an answer to it, and I would have gone very low life. Next, I played Andrew Klinger on Gohan. That was one of the few dice rolls that I won. It was just a good game, but ultimately I got it in the end. Then I played David, also in top 16, the guy from Spain who played Gohan again. And great player, funny guy. But I like I don't know, it was just kind of a weird game. He stayed at a really low hand size, but he did his best, right? And then he got congratulations on top 16. He's so good. So great job to him. Round 6 is my feature match. That was the one against Gogeta. You're going to see that. It's against Marco, I want to say Vasquez. He beat the brakes off me. I went second. He had Zamasus. When he didn't have Zamasus, he had Trunks Unison right on curve. He played better than I did. He went first. And then, especially near the end of the game, I make some really like simple mistakes where it was already like too little too late, but it's like every little bit can count. So I really needed to be on point, and I just wasn't. So needed to clean that up, but that's okay. Round 7, I played Ritzy Gohan. This one I will blame on the bad luck. I went second, whiffed on my top 5, and did not have a turn 1 play, followed by him while I was tapped out on turn 2, ripping a Dabura out of my hand at random when I did not have energy up. That was not a great performance on that end. But, in a 9-round day, most people are going to have a game like that. My next match was 7Ku, generally a favored matchup, probably as a blue, but he did have a lot of, great answers. He didn't necessarily tide me. He was going to, but I did have the Jiren ready to go. And it was just like, great guy, funny dude. Hope to get to play him again soon. And then Daniel Brown on U7, just kind of won that again. I had a Shupilov Mai at the beginning of the game ramped, but then after that it was just like, I played a very slow, simple game of I'll play an extra Shupilov Mai once you finally get rid of mine. I'm going to make it really difficult for you to awaken. We'll just play it through. After that, I got 13th in Swiss, which I technically think is where I end in the tournament, because in top 16, I played my teammate, Michael Legends Carrick, now the world champion in the 21 mirror. I actually only lost by 5K. We only played really game 1 because he did get to go first as the higher seed. I lost by 5K. I dumped hand, and I had a boo, so I had 1 dead card, and he had no dead card, so he gave me his whole hand and got out by 5K. And then we did not get to finish game 2 because it was 50 minutes for a best of 3, and that's top 16 specifically. Top 8 got 60 minutes, but we only got 50. That was not good. It's a good thing I lost, though. 1, because he went on to win Worlds, but 2, because he had a higher seed for the rest of the tournament. And I would not have gotten to go first in those matchups, and would have had a much harder time beating Ritzy or Ivan in those positions. So great job to him. That's really it. On to some shout outs for the thing. I want to shout out Minnesota Crew. That's kind of where I'm from. It's everything I do. You can see it in my logo. It's everywhere. I love these guys to death. I room with them. I play with them all the time. Quick special shout out to Chaser, basically being my personal chauffeur this weekend. He moved and left us, and we miss you, but thank you very much. The judge staff, great as always. David, Charles, Cam, Brian. I'm sure I'm missing someone, but the judges were great as always. Just super kind, very efficient at what they did. PPG, I want to give a shout out to, of course, my team, PPG FOE. Just a great group of guys to test with. The highest level you could possibly ask for. Several of these people were in top 16 or literally world champions this year. I could not be prouder of how everybody performed. Shout outs to Legends. He's the one who put me on the deck. We worked on our deck lists together. You guys are going to see it's like literally a 2-card list difference from one list to another. And he's just such a good guy. He's so strong. Huge congratulations to him for being the world champion and for buying Hot Pot that night. I cannot thank you enough, and I'm so excited to keep building decks with you. Lastly, to you guys, PPG fans, my fans, whatever, just thanks for being around. I had so many great interactions this weekend of people who just came up to me and were like, hey man, love your streams. Thank you for making content. It's just nice to see, right? Sometimes those numbers can bog you down sometimes if you have a small stream, but knowing that people get to watch them and it makes them happy on just some random Tuesday night is very fulfilling. So if you ever want to do that, you can check me out at twitch.tv/Dane Reich, spelt exactly how you see it, I guess, down here. Otherwise, thanks so much to everyone, and I hope you have a great day.